This is Dave with Fry and Bacon Studios. Today we're going to take a look at tables, the what and how. If you want to know more about what tables exactly are, look at my GS Logic series on my YouTube site and you'll see one about tables in relationship to what they are in variables. But here we're just going to look at how they work. One of the first things that we need to do is push on the home button. Then from there, we're going to come down to this bottom button, and by pushing it, you can create a table, as you see I've done. And you can double click on it to rename the table. Now I'm not going to use this table as I already created one for this example. But as you can see, I've renamed my table. Now what I try to do is name my table with a .tbl after it. What this does is help me recognize that this is a table because it shows up in basically the same place in the expression editor that attributes do. So sometimes if you give it a regular name, it can be hard to distinguish it from other attributes. Now we're going to go in and we're going to look at the basic behaviors that you can use in tables. You can also address tables in the regular attributes as well, but for this explanation, I'm just going to show you how to do it with the regular table particular values. Now as we can see here, we have one of our first new change behaviors. It's called change table value. So in this we would come in and select our table that we want to modify. We'd pick the row that we want to modify, the column we want to modify, and what value we want to change it to. This could be addressed to an external attribute in the same way that we do it with other attributes like the change attribute behavior, except that this writes it to a table. Now we want to make sure that if we're addressing attributes in the tables that we have them set up that way. So let's go ahead and take a minute and look at our table. And you can see right now that I have it set as a text attribute. That means in this row and column, or in this particular column, anything I want to display in here has to be a text attribute. And you can do the same. You can create more rows and then change them to the specific attribute that you want to store there. So let's go back now to our example. One of the other things that a lot of people miss doing is saving their table. Once you've modified a table, you need to save it, and you use this save table behavior to do it. You just have to simply select the table. Now the same with this behavior, add and remove row. You can add and remove rows from a table. So you can select your table and then add and remove a row at the beginning, at the end, or at index. So let's go ahead and just look at a quick example of how this all works. What I've got here is a rule that says when touch is pressed, we're going to add a row to our table, and we're going to add it at the beginning. And once we've added that row, then we're going to change the table's value. As you saw, I had a text attribute selected. So I've selected my table, I've told it to write to row 1, column 1, and this is what I want it to write. I wrote in a value just in text. Or you could go in and select a text attribute and it would display whatever's in there. And then I'm going to tell it when I release the mouse button to save the table. And we'll see this in action. Let's look at the display behavior just for a quick minute that I've generated. And you can see that I've used the expression editor to generate the display text. And it'll actually display what's in the table once I write to it. Now I'll show you how to do that quickly. We're going to come down in the expression editor and select table cell value. Once we're in there, we're going to come up and highlight this section that says table. And we're going to come over here and we're going to pick our table. Now this is where you'll see that the table.tbl comes in handy because as you know in the expression editor, this is where your other attributes will be shown as well. So this helps you find it quickly and easily. So we're going to add that table. So we've told it which table we want it to print on the display from. Now in this row category, we want to put the row that we want displayed. So we want row 1. As well as the column that we want, and we know it's column 1. So now, with using this table cell value equation, it'll look to the table, row 1, column 1, and print the text attribute that's there. So let's go ahead, now that we've seen the code, and show it in action. So here it's actually looking at table 1, row 1, because the code is active, but we haven't put anything in there. So once I come down and do touch is pressed, it's going to add the row and write into the table. And we see, we did it. And it also saved the table, and I'll show you how. If you come up here in the preview window and hit the recycle button or the reset button, it restarts all your code. When I push it, you'll see that this text doesn't go away. Now let me show that in another way. So let's go ahead into our example and let's turn off the save table behavior that we've got set up in the release. And let's preview again and see what happens. You'll see when I press and the text is done, it shows up. But when I come up and hit reset, it disappears. This way we can tell that it's saving to the table. That's a quick way to test it to see if it's saving. So I hope this helps clear up some of the things on tables and helps to show you some of the basic ways to use table behaviors and how tables can be effective. There's a lot of templates and there's a lot of information and videos out there in the Game Salad Cookbook and other places where you can find more about tables and how to use them and do other tricks with them. With another Game Salad tutorial, this is Dave with Fry and Bacon Studios.